Hello, I'm David. This is Sapiens Forward with news and discussion on AI topics that matter to regular people. Today on the show, we're going to take a look at some news topics on AI that I think you ought to check out, which have come across my feed recently. So let's go ahead and dive right in. First article up, we have businesses reconsider AI only customer service after implementation challenges. So, a recent Gartner report reveals that half of organizations will abandon plans to significantly reduce customer service workforce by 2027 due to AI integration challenges. A survey of approximately 160 leaders found 95% plan to retain human agents alongside AI, avoiding hasty transition into agentless models that have disappointed customers. So, in some of the recent stories we've looked at over the last couple of months, we've seen some companies going all in on the AI model and then kind of reversing course. Klarna is one that's come up in the news recently several times. They went all in on AI, laid off a bunch of people, and then have come back saying, hey, we're going to hire back some folks. We've seen other organizations like Duolingo, um, noted translation services app provider, going all in on AI and letting go many of their translation contractors and people involved with that type of work. We've also seen other organizations in news media like Business Insider. They are laying off a lot of people. So there are cases of workforce reduction occurring in many different segments. And looking at some of the reports recently, for instance, from PricewaterhouseCoopers AI jobs report from 2025, we see that many of the jobs that are in kind of customer support roles are kind of in the crosshairs of AI disruption. This is kind of some encouraging news to hear that some of these companies they're finding out, which could have been maybe sort of predictable, that AI isn't going to be able to do everything all at once right away, and letting go many different people who are going to be on the front lines of their customer support is a bad move. So I think this is very encouraging news for folks who are in that type of role. It looks like, maybe there is some hope and some optimism that there is still room for that type of position. However, I would say that this is also providing a different message, which is that AI agent technology is going to be seen as critical. So my takeaways from here that I think are going to be valuable to anybody in this type of space is maybe there's still a job, in these types of jobs and customer support, kind of frontline customer interaction. However, it's going to be a requirement that you learn how to use AI tools, learn how to fit them into your processes, and to your daily work. Because ultimately, these companies, if you break it down into the most simple matter, they're looking for productivity gains. They're looking for optimization. They're looking to reduce their costs and increase their profits. So I hate to say it, but it has to be said sometimes that the human element, having employees at a company, if you look at it from the most just black and white standpoint, they're considered a cost. Now they also produce values, so that's a good thing, you know. Um, so keeping these jobs, keeping your role at companies like this, even though they're reconsidering just letting mass amounts of people go and just going straight to AI, they're going to be looking to roll out AI agent tools, and they're going to be expecting their employees to be able to use them. So my advice, my encouragement to anybody who's in this kind of place where you're worried about the company letting people go or rolling out AI tools and you're worried you're going to take your job, I think, keep the frame of mind that, maybe your job isn't going to go away completely, but you ought to understand that they're going to be looking for you to be able to step in and use these tools in a way that's going to help you be more effective at your job. Lean into it. Try and seek the positive. Don't be resistant automatically, and obstructive, but instead, try and figure out, maybe it can make your workday better. There's a silver lining there. Maybe these AI tools can help you, not have to do so much busy work, or the more mundane and just agonizing work as part of your day. Instead, let the AI do that, and you can focus on working with people. So there, interesting developments. We hope to see more of that, kind of more sanity in the job market, and not just knee-jerk reactions by corporate leaders just saying, "Hey, let's go all on an AI and lay everybody off." No, we don't want to see that. All right. Let's go to the next story. MIT develops AI technology for rapid digital art restoration. Rather. So apparently, an MIT researcher, Alex Ketchkin, developed an AI technique that digitally restores damaged paintings in hours versus traditional methods taking years or hundreds of hours. The system creates digital reconstructions printed on transparent polymer sheets, demonstrating in this article. I'm going to pull this up here actually. Taking just a really hundreds of year old painting and making it look so much newer. This is fascinating. This is the kind of stuff we want to see, right? Um, don't want to hear so much all the time about potential job disruption and things like that. But what can AI do to actually um, help and fix things in the world, make new things, make old things better? So looking through this is on Nature, so nature.com. I think what's fascinating about this is it's not actually painting over the image. So if you're wondering what they mean by the description of the article, so no, I mean typical art restoration involves somebody painstakingly um, using cleaning elements and tools and painting very delicately to restore damaged components of a painting to make it look as close to um, good condition as they can make it, right? Well, that takes, as you can imagine, a really long time. It's a very specific type of skill. It's very delicate work and can take hundreds of hours. There's a lot of artwork out there, that physical artwork that needs restoration, and maybe we'll never have it done simply because there aren't enough artists and technicians and skilled people who can do that type of work, or the resources may not be available to pay them to do that or have the budget for that sort of thing. So there's purportedly just many pieces of art out there who are just those pieces of art are in terrible condition and we're never going to get restored because of that. Now, if we look at this depiction of what's going on here with this particular example from this research article, and we see they're not actually specifically restoring the artwork itself. What they're doing, and it talks a bit more about the technological component here, but they're creating what they're calling a digital infill mask. So they're using artificial intelligence type of systems. I think specifically in an article, it talks about generative adversarial networks. So that's a type of artificial intelligence concept whereby you have um, several neural net systems that are working in conjunction, one with the real trained data and another one creating artificial or synthetic training resulting data, that can then be compared to with the real training data and be scored and evaluated to determine if that's relevant or scoring high or it's a good match. This type of technology is used in other ways and not so nice ways, for creating deep fakes and things like that. Which, if you're not familiar, a deep fake is a type of AI concept of creating like videos or imagery that match up to, like, let's say a picture of a real person, a public figure or a celebrity or a politician, and be able to create video or images of them doing something that didn't actually happen but looking incredibly lifelike and real. So in this case, we have a really great example of something positive being done with this technology. And so what they do is it evaluates the damaged painting, develops an infill mask. So this mask, in a sense, is not like a mask like you might put over your mouth or your face, but rather this is kind of like a layer that you put over it, which adds various pieces of color to it. Um, and then when that's laid over, if it's say it's on a clear polymer sheet, if those elements that it digitally determined would match over to the original and correct it, that gets printed onto this clear sheet that can put over it. You lay it on top of it, and then when it sits down on top of it and you press it together, well, the result here is a much better looking painting. It's just really fascinating, and can be done in just a fraction of the time. So I think this is rather novel. I mean, really kudos to the folks who have put this together and done the research to develop these types of solutions. This is the kind of stuff we want to see with AI, making things better, making things possible that weren't possible before. Um, Even if it was possible, it wasn't possible within a reasonable amount of time to actually do because of human limitations. So that's good stuff. Next story. Let's see what we got next. Um, so the Australian government, let's switch over to the government side of things. The Australian government commits to AI leadership strategy and regulation. So the industry minister, Tim Aries, declares Australia must learn and lean in hard to AI benefits or risk becoming dependent on other supply chains. So I think this is an interesting area to dig into. We talked about the other day about how the Canadian government is establishing its platform for how it's going to approach AI regulation, trying to emphasize economic benefits and not regulation, go too hard into limiting economic growth in that area, but still leaving room for potentials for data protection and privacy. Again, we see another national government kind of wringing their hands over, where to focus, whether trying to lean in and develop leadership and create growth and gains with AI, or to try and establish significant and substantial amounts of regulation. I think it's notable that they're talking about how they don't want to be dependent on somebody else's AI supply chain. So that's really a big piece of what's going on here, right? So there's this concept, there's kind of this polar contest going on with AI in the world, with largely the United States on one end and China on the other. And many other countries who are notable and substantial in their own right, they may not have as substantial, though, investments in AI at the moment. And so what I gather from a lot of these news articles and discussions and press releases from various governments is, there's a lot of worry about being left behind, but also being left to be able to use whatever AI that the main AI leaders make available. Because at some point, if you have control over these sophisticated AI systems, you may have tools that are sufficiently capable to prevent others from ever catching up. I think that's ultimately what's driving the contest between, let's say, leadership in the United States versus leadership in China, and that potential fear of being left behind and being utterly dependent on AI tools that are ultimately owned and operated and managed and led and funded, financed, invested in other countries, um, being left to depend on those things utterly. One way that could be particularly disadvantageous for countries, if you look at the state of politics in the United States, there's been some aspects that have been adversarial in the last year to other countries, specifically, around things like tariffs and trade and stuff like that, which that's not really an area I want to get into here. And this channel really focused on looking at how AI impacts employment and jobs and education and healthcare. But ultimately, regulation on AI does impact us and regular people like me and you, because we will be the consumers and the users of AI tools by and large, and our data and information will go into those tools. And regulation that countries put out will, by and large, have a significant impact on what the AI tools and AI companies that own those tools will be able to do with that data. How long to be able to retain it? How about would they be able to use it for other things and train it and share it? So it matters. I care about that. You should care about it too. It looks like Australia, in this particular case, is really looking at the economic growth side of things. I don't blame them, but we're really gonna have to see where this all goes. All right, let's set up the next article. So talking about employment again. So private equity CEO predicts significant AI-driven employment disruption. So a private equity billionaire Robert Smith recently told about 5,000 some investors at a conference in Berlin that something like 60% of the people at the conference are going to be looking for a job next year, while 40% of the people at the conference are going to have an AI agent that's working for them. It's a pretty bold statement, and not the only really rich person recently in the news who's involved with AI making pronouncements about mass unemployment. I think it's notable that a lot of companies are trying to implement AI, but at like the enterprise level, it doesn't seem to be going very well. I think it's also pretty interesting that um, reportedly, Smith's firm has raised something like $20 billion for AI investments. So you really have to think about some of the pronouncements being made by some of these luminaries and big investors in the AI industry, what their motives are, what their biases are, and maybe the conflicts of interest. Certainly, somebody who makes a lot of money with private equity, which buys companies, is really interested in seeing companies use AI tools, maybe to create efficiencies, in order to create more profits. And of course, private equity companies make a lot of money that way, by owning companies that are very profitable. And to some degree, I believe these types of discussions and pronouncements and statements made in public media can have this kind of feedback loop. If you have very prominent people saying, hey, this is going to happen, you all should be scared about it. You can also interpret it as like, hey, AI is going to be so powerful and so effective and strong that all these people are going to lose their jobs. The people who are losing their jobs potentially take that, and it's very nerve wracking and it's very scary. And the people who run companies, they hear a totally different thing when they hear that kind of statement. What they hear is, oh, I'll be able to lay off a ton of people and save a ton of money, make more profit, and get bigger bonuses. That's nice. I don't think that's great. But I can understand how people in different places, like corporate leadership, technical leadership, could be looking at this type of pronouncement in a totally different way. And just recap, like a lot of potential displacement of workers, heavy utilization of AI tools. Anybody that's in corporate leadership at a company that's looking to integrate AI or is heavily involved with AI, those are all plus signs. Those are all big thumbs up, right? So based on the other reports that we hear about and we read about and we talk about here, in recent times, and even in this particular show today, um, I'm not going to take what Mr. Smith here is saying completely at face value. I do think very strongly that there's going to be a lot of displacement and disruption to the workforce in the coming years, recent time, the very near future. I mean, it's happening right now. Um, but some of the more dire predictions, I don't realistically believe that's going to be the case. I think over time, over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, like easily maybe 60, 75% of people may have their jobs heavily disrupted, and they might move into new things and do different things, but just half the workforce just straight up be unemployed. I don't know. I don't think that's the case. But what I would say, what I would advise to anybody who's worried about this kind of thing, like I was saying earlier, now is the time to really look at developing just a basic AI literacy. That's one of the key principles I talk about here, at Sapiens Forward, is that AI is here, so we need to understand how it works. We need to figure out how we can incorporate it into our lives, how we can incorporate it into the work we do, so we can figure out what positives it can provide for us. Another principle I talk about is AI is not all good or all bad. It just is what it is. People who are bad natured are going to use AI to do not so good things and do bad things. But people who are good natured are going to use it to do good things. Just how we saw with the other example just a few minutes ago. Some people use generative adversarial networks, with AI systems, to create deepfakes, to create propaganda, and to scam people. Other researchers are using the same kind of technology to restore priceless artwork. So, to a large degree, I think the good or bad of AI is based on who's using it, and we can all, on an individual basis, find ways to use this for positive. We can find ways to do things more efficiently in our own lives, save some time so we can spend more time with our family or get our work done quicker or something like that. Plenty of good things. So, again, my advice is, if you're worried about layoffs, if you're worried about AI disruption to your job, step one, try it out. Try out AI tools. Maybe your company has Copilot available, or you can find any of the other ones like Gemini, OpenAI's ChatGPT, check out Anthropic's Claude, and any other number of tools. Just try one out like that, basic chat AI tool, and just see what it's like. See what it can do. Ask it questions. You can even just go to google.com and go on AI mode. That's a really easy way to go. Doesn't cost any money. Try it out for some of the stuff you do for work. You know, if you have access to, like, let's say, Copilot from Microsoft at work, just try out some of your tasks. If you do kind of knowledge-based work, office-based work, work on a computer, try it out. Ask it questions. Ask it about the type of stuff you do for a job. I'd caution you, if you work with sensitive information or sensitive, um, confidential information that belongs to your company, I would not put that kind of stuff in. But if your company that you work for has a license for it, and they have a special license in place so that it protects the confidentiality of your company information, then maybe it'll be available to use it like that, and not have to worry. But I would still be careful about what you put into it, because it may be possible that there will be data sharing with a company and the provider. That's all to say, try it out, see what it can do, see what it can do well, see what it can't do well. Ultimately, I think it's going to be pretty clear, and easy to suggest that the human element of human interaction, providing support, negotiating, discussing, working directly with customers, those are all types of scenarios and occasions that are going to just be done so much better by a person. And so that's always going to be in demand. You got to ask yourself, do you do a lot of work like that? Is your work almost entirely on the computer and do you not interact with people? Is it kind of a mix, or do you work primarily with people? You can see where I'm going with that. Seek out opportunities where there's a human component and lean into that. Learn how to use the tools. If you do those things, even if you're really nervous about what could be happening in your industry, at your company, with your type of job, even if you do those kinds of things, you're going to be way ahead of other people who are doing nothing like that and just kind of doing what they've always been doing. And I hate to say it, but I don't think that's going to cut it anymore. There's going to be a lot of disruption, and it's going to take a lot of change, and we're going to have to lean into that. All right, let's check out the next story. So this is the last one for today. So Starbucks coffee company implements AI assistant to support employee operations. So I think this is an interesting one. This is a good one. This is good. This is more of an example of companies recognizing that just replacing people and human activities with AI is going to work so well. So Starbucks created their Green Dot Assist AI tool. This is for their baristas, the coffee makers, the managers at their Starbucks coffee shop location, right? And so purportedly they had some disappointing results with more customer facing automations, so using AI tools or automation tools to directly interface with customers. So they're putting their efforts into tools that augment or make more efficient the work that their employees are doing. So having access to databases for like drink recipes, how to make this drink or that drink, how to troubleshoot fixing equipment, or for managers to manage the schedule and stuff like that. So that's another example, I think, and a really good example of how I think that companies ought to use this technology. We've had some examples earlier where they just see straight up tons of layoffs, and we've got other examples of companies where they're using the technology to not necessarily let go of workers, but to help their workers be more efficient. Now, at the end of the day, the whole capitalist model is to for a company to have this profit motive to generate more money and profit, and they can do so by being more efficient and effective at creating their product and value and selling it and making their customers happy, having their customers come back, right? I mean, that's the basic formula for capitalism. So a lot of ways you can go about doing that. There's a variety of ways you can go about creating those efficiencies and creating profit. Some companies, they determine like, hey, we're not making enough profit. Let's fire a lot of employees. All of a sudden, they're more profitable for a little while, right? Well, that can have unintended side effects. I mean, maybe they won't be well prepared for the next year, the next fiscal quarter, because now they have more demoralized employees. They're not working very hard. They're like, what's the point? I'm just going to be fired anyway. That maybe they're overworked because now they're doing twice as much work because the company has less people. All kinds of negative side effects could occur from that, right? A different approach? Well, instead of firing a lot of employees to try and be more efficient, how about we make our employees just more efficient by giving them tools to help them do their job better, help them do their job more easily so they can focus on doing those really value added aspects of what their work entails, like serving the customers nicely, Can just imagine, just kind of the cliche. You go to the coffee shop and the barista, the coffee maker, has just got a really, snide and sassy attitude. Nobody really knows, like, what was their day like so far. Maybe they've been working with a lot of really impatient people and they're just having a bad day, understandably, right? Well, if they had some of these tools, maybe some of the busy work and things that are keeping them from certain customers well can just be done more easily. And then they can make the customers happier. The customers are more likely to come back, spend more money, make more money. Company does well. Maybe they give bonuses to the employees too, or give them more opportunities. They keep their job. Those are all positives. So, maybe I'm being super rosy, optimistic, positive here with this, but I think these are occasions where this is really novel software, ultimately artificial intelligence tools that can make workers' jobs better and makes the company more profitable. And it doesn't necessarily mean you got to lay off a lot of people doing it. I will say though, with the example that we had in the previous article talking about workers who are primarily computer based and maybe isolated, you take a job like directly serving food and beverages in a restaurant or a cafe setting, there's a heavy human element there, right? I mean, certainly there's a lot of potential for automation in drinks being made. If you look at like a McDonald's restaurant, they typically utilize a lot of automation for beverage fulfillment. You have like a little miniature conveyor belt, with the drink dispenser, and you put the cups on and it outputs. All right. Certainly, the complexity of the orders of drinks you might have at Starbucks could make that a bit difficult. But I haven't been behind the counter at a Starbucks, but I wouldn't be surprised to find that there'll be more automation coming in there in the future. But ultimately, people want to make sure they get the kind of drink they ordered, and sometimes those drinks are complex. So there's a heavy human interactive element to that. So that is another reason why Starbucks has opted to retain the human interactive component to their restaurants and stores, but just trying to make those people more effective at their job. Is it going to play out like that everywhere? Well, probably not. There's probably going to be jobs where there's little to no human interactive element, and if that's the case, then there really needs to be a lot of soul searching and thinking about, what does the future for that type of job look like? Sometimes those type of jobs existed in the first place because there's some kind of problem or process that couldn't be solved without it. If AI solves the process or problem that caused that type of job to exist in the first place, a job probably won't remain forever. So we talk a lot about this sort of stuff on the show. Disruption, it's going to be a fact of life, and we'll have to deal with that. But as we can see, there's a silver lining sometimes. It's not all layoffs. Sometimes it just means people getting tools to help them do their job better. So we need to focus on those positives, try and train and skill up to avoid being stuck in those situations where there's no alternative, and just keep moving forward. That's really the focus of the show. We just want to try and figure out how we can help ourselves learn about and use AI so it can be a positive force in our life rather than a negative. Well, that's what we have for you today. Thanks so much for checking it out. If you find this kind of content and information valuable, I appreciate a like, or just a thumbs up on the channel and on the video. If you want to get this kind of news and information on a regular basis, hey, please consider following and subscribing on the channel. You can find it on YouTube, Facebook, X.com, all the usual places. And again, sapiensforward.com. Well, thanks so much for checking it out and take care. See you next time.